Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Lisa, and I am the Senior Learning Manager here at the Jewish Museum. Thank you so much for joining us for our Wednesday Wisdom, our live object talk series. And I'm really excited about today's object. The object I've selected is one of over 40,000 objects in the Jewish Museum London's designated collection that showcases Jewish life and history. Our programs exist to preserve the unique and diverse voices of Jewish communities and explore connections between faiths and culture. So this month, our theme is culture. And today I have selected an object that focuses on a key part of Jewish culture, on food. So, like many cultures around the world, food is super important to Jewish culture. And I think every one of us, Jewish and non-Jewish, has a comfort food, a food that we think of that perhaps reminds us of home, reminds us of a certain time or a certain place. And it might be kind of home cooking that you're thinking of. It could be restaurant food, absolutely anything. So for me, when I think of Jewish comfort food, I think of my mom's brisket, I think of noodle kugel, and I think of matzo ball soup. And I would love to know what you think of when you think of comfort food, Jewish or non-Jewish. So please do leave some responses in the comments below. We'd love to see those. So I'm going to share an object from our collection about an iconic Jewish restaurant in the East End, and perhaps some of you might know it. So I'm going to share my screen now and give you a moment to look at the object. So I'll just share my screen. Perfect. So I'll give you a couple of seconds just to take a look at this object. And I'm really intrigued to know what the first thing was that you noticed. So what we are looking at here is a postcard, and it's a postcard for Bloom's Restaurant in the East End of London. The postcard is about 10 by 14 centimeters large, or I should say small. It's printed on yellow card and shows images of the restaurant of Bloom's, also of Tower Bridge and of Petticoat Lane Market, so two kind of East End landmarks of the era as well. And on the back of the postcard, which we can't see at this time, is listed the address of Bloom's other restaurant in North London. So Bloom's was a famous kosher restaurant which operated for about 90 years between 1920 and 2010 and had branches in both the East End and in North London. So before I speak further about Bloom's, the restaurant, I want to first paint a picture of the Jewish East End of London at the turn of the 20th century. The years 1880 to 1914 mark a period in history known as the Great Migration. And between these years, over 3 million Jewish people left Russia and Eastern Europe to find a better life. During this time, Jewish people faced much religious persecution, economic hardship, restriction of movement, and terrible living conditions. About 150,000 of the Jewish people who left Russia and Eastern Europe settled in England. And many of them came and settled in the East End of London. Now, there are many reasons why immigrant communities tend to congregate in one area when arriving in a new country. It might be that it is the most affordable part of town. There might also have been family members or relatives or friends that perhaps moved over earlier, and the kind of new people who are coming to join them want to live nearby in the same neighborhood. There might also be practical reasons as well. For a Jewish community, it might be important to live near a synagogue to be able to walk there on Shabbat. There would also be a need to be close to kosher shops. So you had lots of small synagogues that were being built up in the East End at this time, at kind of the turn of the 20th century. A lot of the new immigrants spoke Yiddish, and there was a huge appetite for Yiddish theater in the East End as well. And you also had a lot of kosher shops, kosher butchers, and kosher restaurants like Bloom's. So Bloom's, the restaurant, was established by Morris Bloom. He was an immigrant, a Jewish immigrant from Lithuania, who arrived in London in 1912. Now, Morris Bloom was a connoisseur of table delicacies, and he developed the original Vienna-style veal, as well as a new and tastier method of pickling salt beef. Morris Bloom was convinced that the public would absolutely love his food, and he opened his first kosher restaurant in 1920 at number 58 Brick Lane in the heart of the East End. His idea was a huge success. Bloom's became so successful that the salt beef sandwich became a sort of household name, and the restaurant became this real symbol of the East End itself. It was seen to many Jewish people as a sort of community center. They had kind of traditional kosher Jewish cooking, and also it was kind of a place where people could meet up with friends or family to discuss lots of issues and have interesting conversations. And the success of Bloom's was so great that they were actually forced to move into a larger premises at number 2 Brick Lane. And then in 1930, Morris Bloom opened a kosher food factory in Wentworth Street in Stepney. Now, unfortunately, during the Second World War, the Brick Lane restaurant was completely destroyed during the heavy bombing of the East End. The restaurant was eventually reopened by Morris's son, Sidney Bloom, at 90 Whitechapel High Street in 1952. However, sadly, Morris himself had passed away before the restaurant reopened. Sidney Bloom also opened a second restaurant in 1965 in North London this time, at number 130 Golders Green Road. And this was to cater for the growing Jewish community that was emerging in Golders Green in North London. Now, the restaurants they were very proud of their kosher certifications, and they had a rabbi and a religious supervisor in the kitchen at all times to ensure that they were observing all of the kashrut rules very, very carefully. So Bloom's became incredibly famous within the Jewish community. There was, on the one hand, this kind of famous food, and also this famous rudeness and irritability of the staff that worked there, that actually kept people coming. So the waiters who worked at Bloom's, they had to pay for each meal that they served from the kitchen until they began to earn a commission on what they sold. However, the rudeness was tolerated, with most people saying it was all part of this experience. Some people even went so far as to say that the food wasn't even all that good, but it was more about this having this experience of a traditional Ashkenazi dinner, complete with the bickering of the staff to make one feel at home. So we do have also in our collection a couple of menus from Bloom's. So this was the menu for the Golders Green location with an image of the restaurant on the front of the menu. And I just wanted to take a quick look inside the menu. It is quite hard to read. It's quite small, but you can see some kind of classics. You've got some classic chicken soups. You've got latkes on the menu. You've got chicken livers, pickled herring. You've got three ways of doing the herring. So I think it's really quite interesting to actually get to take a look back at this menu and also to look at the prices as well. Right. So the demand for Bloom's food continued to grow, and the demand was so high that actually in 1960, so just before the restaurant in Golders Green was actually opened, Sidney Bloom also opened a canning department to deliver Bloom's food to people's homes, to Jewish schools, and also kosher holiday camps across the UK. And at its height, Bloom's delivered food wholesale to over 500 kosher butchers and delis across England. It also sold its food to shops and supermarkets as well. And they had a wide variety of kind of traditional Jewish meals, everything from salt beef to chicken soup to knedele, which are matzah meal dumplings, to pickles, sour pickles, and lakshin as well. The restaurant in Whitechapel closed down in 1996. The neighborhood in the East End was changing, and a lot of the Jewish community that used to live in the East End had moved and relocated to North London. So there wasn't really as much demand for the restaurant in the East End, which helped lead to its closing down. In 2007, yet another new restaurant was opened in Edgware, but that soon closed down, and followed by the restaurant in Golders Green closing down in the summer of 2010. So it's clear that Bloom's has left an incredible legacy on London, on the East End, on North London, and on the many people who passed through its doors throughout the time that it was open. So I'm sure we would absolutely love to hear your comments and your memories. If you have been to Bloom's restaurant and you have memories from eating there, do feel free to pop those in the comments. We would love to see them. So that's all from me today. Thank you so much for joining me on exploring this aspect of Jewish culture. And do join us at the same time next week at 12 noon for the next object talk in our series. So thank you very much and have a great day.